Meu Filho me deixou na rua no Natal. A verdade que deixou todos choke. The cold wind bit at her face as Maria stood on the side of the empty road, her breath visible in the frosty air. A flickering streetlight cast eerie shadows around her, and the sound of distant laughter felt like a cruel joke. How had it come to this? Abandoned on Christmas Day, the most joyful time of the year, left alone by the one person she had devoted her life to. The stories of families coming together, exchanging gifts, filled the air with an unbearable irony that pierced her heart. What was truly horrifying, though, was the look in her son's eyes when he drove away. It wasn't anger or frustration, it was something darker, something that made her stomach twist. His face was pale, blank, as if he had been overtaken by an invisible force. The sudden urge to slam the car door had resulted instead in the gentle clicking sound that echoed in her ears. "How could you?" echoed in her mind, haunting her like a ghost. With every tick of the clock in the nearby diner, she felt the tension stretch thicker. The festive lights that adorned every storefront turned into mocking glitter, taunting her plight. Just last week, she had watched him with pride as he decorated their Christmas tree, laughter spilling from their home like sweet honey. Yet here she was now, feeling the sting of abandonment sharper than the icy wind against her skin. Could this really be happening? How could love turn so cold? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. A soft sob broke from her lips as she forced herself to think, could she call someone? But the thought of admitting her situation felt like 1,000 knives twisting in her gut. Silently, the world around her moved on, people laughing, celebrating, but she was all alone. Then she saw it, a flicker in the distance, a figure shrouded in winter layers, moving towards her. Was it hope or simply a mirage conjured by desperation? Each step of the figure clicked against the pavement like a countdown, her heart racing. Was this a stranger, or could it be someone who might understand what she was enduring? Maria took a deep breath, the lump in her throat heavy and unbearable. With every ounce of strength, she stood straight, ready to confront whatever came next. Was she truly fading away, or would this unexpected meeting lead to salvation in her darkest hour? The question hung in the air, tinged with both fear and anticipation. As the figure drew closer, Maria squinted against the harsh glare of the streetlight. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest, drowning out the laughter that echoed ominously in the background. A man approached, wrapped in a thick, tattered coat that looked like it had seen better days. The hood obscured most of his face, but she could make out deep lines etched into his weathered skin, a roadmap of hardship. He paused, perhaps sensing her vulnerability, and then stepped into the light. "Are you all right, miss?" His voice was rough, yet somehow soothing. There was a flicker of kindness in his eyes that felt almost surreal amid the chaos of her emotions, a stark contrast to the coldness she had just experienced from her son. Shaking her head, tears spilled down her cheeks as she managed a weak, "No, I don't know." "Come on now," he said, taking a step closer, his hands moving slowly as if to show he meant no harm. "You don't have to be alone out here. It's too cold, especially today." Maria glanced around, the shadows of the empty street enveloping them. In a world that had suddenly turned unkind, would opening up to this stranger make her more vulnerable? But something in his gaze urged her to take the leap. "I was just abandoned," she whispered, fresh waves of pain crashing over her. "By my son." His brow furrowed, and an understanding crossed his face. "This day does strange things to people," he said quietly, as if remembering his own ghost of Christmas past. "Don't forget that you're not the only one left out in the cold." Maria's stomach twisted at his words. All around her, it felt like the world was partying without her, but here stood another soul marred by loneliness, grappling with his own pains. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he pressed gently. "Family?" She let out a bitter laugh, a sound cracked and dry. Family? That's a laugh. He looked down for a moment, then offered, you can't let this define you, you know? Sometimes it takes falling apart to realize who you really are. A flicker of resolve ignited within her. Could she really be someone different? Someone stronger? What do I do now? Follow me, he said, glancing back down the street. There's a place I know where you can warm up and think. Went there once when I was lost, too. Before she could agree or object, he turned on his heel and started walking. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. Was it safe to follow? Could this man be trusted? But what did she have to lose? Taking a deep breath, Maria reluctantly stepped forward, her feet crunching against the gravel. The familiar laughter and cheer faded behind her, replaced by a sense of purpose that felt foreign yet invigorating. As they walked, the cold numbness began to melt away, replaced by a small flicker of hope. Could this truly lead her away from the shadow of despair? With each step, a tiny part of her began to believe it was possible, but then, from behind them came a sound that froze her in her tracks, a voice she hadn't expected to hear, a voice from the past she thought she'd left behind. Mom? The shout echoed in the stillness, sending a chill down Maria's spine. Was this a cry for help or a haunting reminder of betrayal? She turned slowly, her heart pounding as dread rushed back in. What now? The road ahead had just become much more complicated. Maria's heart raced as she turned, her eyes darting frantically across the street. The voice that called out to her was unmistakably her son's, the same boy she had held close when the world felt safe and warm. But now, standing in this cold, unforgiving night, the gap between them felt insurmountable. Daniel? She whispered, her voice trembling. A wave of emotions crashed over her: joy, fear, anger. She felt exposed, like standing on a cliff, torn between the urge to scream and the desire to run. A figure emerged from the darkness, illuminated by the flickering lights of the street lamp. Daniel's youthful face, once bright with innocence, now held shadows of uncertainty. Mom, please. He called out, desperation lacing his words. I thought you were gone, I couldn't find you. Maria's breath hitched in her throat. Gone? She had never intended to disappear, she had merely been tossed into a storm of pain and confusion. You left me. You don't know what I went through. Her voice felt lost in the night, swallowed by an overwhelming sense of betrayal. The man beside her shifted, his presence a silent anchor. He turned to study Daniel, assessing the situation. Maria caught the flash of concern in his eyes, hinting that he could see this was no ordinary reunion. Mom, I was scared, Daniel continued, taking a tentative step forward. His hands trembled at his sides as if gripping some unseen weight. I thought maybe you didn't want me anymore. I couldn't face the holidays without you. Don't you dare say that. Maria's voice cracked like ice underfoot. How could you think I'd abandon you? I was trying to find a way to give us both a better life. Daniel's eyes filled with tears, reflecting the anguish she felt in her heart. It didn't feel like it. You were gone. You just left me there alone. His voice broke, and it felt like a knife slicing through the chilly air. In that moment, time stretched, each heartbeat echoing like thunder. The laughter from the nearby festivities faded into a ghostly background hum, trailing off into the distance. The sounds of joy felt so foreign now, as if they belonged to a world Maria couldn't touch. The man beside her watched silently, gauging her reaction. Maria, he said gently, drawing her gaze back to him. You need to decide how you want this to go. Are you here for your son, or are you still lost in your pain? His words sunk deep. Maria felt the urge to explain, to make Daniel understand how hard things had been. But as she looked at her son, her heart unwinding with sorrow, she realized that the past was a haunting specter that offered no comfort. Daniel, she finally breathed, if you only knew, but the words escaped her, slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. How could she explain her struggle when all he saw was abandonment? Daniel's expression softened, the anger melting away as he took a step closer. Mom, we can figure this out together. Just, don't walk away again. Could she trust him? Could they really stitch together the pieces of their broken lives? Maria felt the warmth of hope stirring deep within her, a spark. But just at that moment, a loud crash echoed nearby. They all flinched, turning their heads towards the darkened alley where shadows danced sinisterly. Something was stirring amongst the trash bins and the darkness, something that was not waiting for a moment of reconciliation. Stay back. The man warned, positioning himself protectively in front of Maria and Daniel. Maria's heart thundered in her chest. The promise of hope teetered on the edge of chaos as she realized they were not alone anymore. Something dangerous lurked in the night, and her chance for a reunion was slipping through her fingers. What lay in wait behind the shadows? Maria's heart felt like it might burst as she stared into the darkened alley. The crashing sound stirred something primal within her, a mix of fear and protective instinct. Daniel's eyes widened, mirroring her own panic, but the man beside her remained alert, his muscles tensed for action. "Mom, what's happening?" Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know," she breathed, her mind racing. Panic clawed at her throat. From the shadows, a figure emerged, half-hidden, lurking just out of reach of the streetlight's glow. It was a man, tall and disheveled, with eyes that glinted like shards of glass in the dark. He was mumbling to himself, the words a low rumble that echoed ominously down the street. "Gonna take it, gonna get what's mine." Maria's grip tightened on Daniel's arm. "We need to go, now." But the man in front of them didn't move. He stepped forward instead, confronting the stranger. "What do you want?" There was authority in his voice, a command that staved off the encroaching shadows. The lurking figure paused, glancing between them, calculations whirring behind his eyes. "You're in the wrong place, friend. Just some family issues, you know? I don't want to hurt anyone, just a little trouble, just a little help needed." He took a step closer, his hands shifting, revealing something metallic that glinted in the dim light. Fear shot through Maria like ice water. "Get back!" she shouted, pushing Daniel behind her. A primal instinct surged within her, she'd protect her son at any cost. "Easy, easy," the man in the alley held up his hands, fingers twitching. "No need for anyone to get hurt. Just give me what I want, and I'll let you go." "What do you want?" the man beside Maria said, his muscles coiling tight like a spring. "Everything." The stranger's smile was chilling, a mix of madness and desperation. "You have no idea what I need." "But you will." Maria felt the world tilt beneath her. This was supposed to be a night of reunion, a moment to bridge the gap with Daniel. Instead, it had spiraled into chaos, and danger loomed thick in the air, wrapping around them like a shroud. "Mom, what's he talking about?" Daniel's voice was a tremor, laced with fear. "Just stay close to me," she whispered fiercely, heart pounding. "We'll get through this." Without warning, the man lunged forward, staggering towards them with a jagged movement. The tension snapped, a coiled spring releasing. The man in front of Maria sprang into action, shoving her and Daniel aside as he charged at the stranger. "I said, back off." The shout erupted, raw and commanding, as the two men collided. Maria stumbled, her heart lodged in her throat. She watched, horrified, as they grappled, the shadows around them alive with violence. The chaos blurred the night, and for a moment, she felt as if she were in the eye of a storm. "Daniel! Get behind the car!" she shouted, fear clawing at her throat. The world around them erupted into chaos, and she realized the promise of a family reunion was dissolving in the face of an unseen terror. But in the depths of the struggle, Maria noticed something strange. The man from the alley wasn't just fighting for something, he was fighting against something deeper, a personal demon that raged within him. The uncertainty stilled the air between them as she watched, lost in the turmoil. But a sharp sound, a loud crack like a gunshot, snapped her attention back. "What was that?" she gasped, eyes darting back to Daniel, who stood frozen, horror etched across his face. Even in that moment of last-ditch effort, she felt it. Something far worse than an argument, darker than the night, was creeping toward them, hungry and relentless. What had she just stumbled into? And could the night become even more horrifying? The sound echoed, chilling her spine, and Maria blinked, her breath hitching in her throat. The man's struggle didn't just involve limbs and anger, it felt like a dance with shadows. Each movement held a desperate energy, a raw desire to claim something lost, perhaps his sanity or something darker. "Mom. What's happening?" Daniel's voice was a tremor, but she couldn't respond. Her eyes were glued to the scene unfolding before her. The fighting grew rougher, the sound of flesh against flesh drowning out the muffled noises of the distant city. The man from the alley, he was wild, unpredictable, every swing, every thrust was laced with palpable desperation. "Run, Maria!" The man beside her yelled, but before she could process his command, the figure in the alley broke free, stumbling back into the light. Maria's blood ran cold as the dim glow reflected off the blade in his hand. "Stay where you are!" he shrieked, eyes wide and frantic, framed by madness. He waved the weapon menacingly like a conductor leading an orchestra of chaos. "Daniel, get to the car!" Maria shouted, pushing her son back, panic igniting every nerve in her body. But instead of obeying, Daniel stepped closer, his eyes darting from his mother to the man and back again. "I can help," he protested, his voice cracking. "No!" Maria screeched, instinct overwhelming her. This was not a game, this was real danger. "Help?" The man in the alley laughed, a chilling sound that reverberated against the brick walls. "You can't help anyone. You're just like the rest of them, selfish, unaware. But don't worry, I won't hurt you, much." The world leaned toward silence, the intensity thickening in the air. Maria felt a swell of frustration surge within her. Couldn't he see the humanity in them? But before she could retort, the man charged. Out of instinct, the figure beside her flung himself between Maria and the inbound threat. The clash was violent, echoing hourly downfall. Maria's heart raced as she watched desperate hands grappling for a grasp on survival. "Get out of here!" the man shouted at Maria once again. This time his voice cracked, the strain of the battle evident. In that heartbeat, Maria felt a shift. A glimmer of movement flickered in the corner of her eye. She turned just in time to see a figure slink from the shadows. A second man. Smaller, but his presence was just as menacing. "Back up!" this new intruder commanded, his voice low and threatening. The blade in the first man's hand trembled as his attention divided. Maria felt the chill sweep through the street, a harbinger of something far worse than she ever anticipated. "Why are you doing this?" Maria demanded, desperation pouring from her. "Because you have something I need," he spat, his wild eyes narrowed, glancing nervously between the other attacker and Maria. "Is it my son? Is that what you want?" Her voice broke, the very thought wrenching her gut. A sly smile crept across the stranger's face. "Not exactly, but he is part of it, the bigger picture, you might say." "Every move has its price." Maria's stomach dropped. What bigger picture? The world that felt so controlled suddenly unraveled. "Mom." Daniel's voice hit her like a slap. She turned to him, her heart racing. As their eyes locked, she saw something shift. Fear melted into resolve, and in that heartbeat, she understood she couldn't let anything happen to him. Not now, not ever. But before she could react, the chaos exploded again. The two men lunged at each other, oblivious to the truth that hung dangerously around them. Shadows deepened, and Maria felt her breath stutter. This was only the beginning. What was the price they would all pay? And how deep did this dark web run? Maria hesitated, her heart a thunderous drum. In the midst of chaos, answers eluded her. But one thing was clear, she needed to fight for her family, even against the darkest elements of the night. And yet, could she survive the storm that was brewing? Gripping Daniel closer, she prepared herself for what might come next. The air thickened, suffocating in its intensity as Maria's mind raced. She hadn't planned for this. What mother ever did? The frantic movements of two men locked in combat blurred in her vision, her world tightening around them like a vice. The metallic scent of blood mingled with the city's dampness, clawing at her senses. "Daniel, I need you to listen closely," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Find somewhere safe. I don't care if it's just behind that dumpster. Just stay low." Daniel's eyes were wide, reflecting fear and defiance, yet he hesitated. "But you can't now," Maria yelled, fire rising within her. She felt the pull of motherly instinct tearing at her heartstrings, a fierce desire to protect him rising like a tidal wave. With a slight nod, Daniel ducked away, melting into the shadows of the alley. The moment was a breath of relief. Her child was moving, but it left Maria standing alone against what felt like a storm. The first man, still grappling with the attacker, shouted out a name that tore through the chaos and lodged itself in her mind. "Rico! Stop this madness." Rico, she thought. The name sounded familiar, echoing from whispered conversations that had long slipped from her memory. But how could she think about that now? The man before her, furious and frenzied, turned sharply, his eyes catching the light. Madness twisted his features even further. It was like looking at a beast, not a man. "Are you going to help, or just stand there?" He barked at his opponent through gritted teeth. The other man didn't flinch, a predator waiting to strike. "Help? You think I owe you anything? You brought this upon yourself." The irony in his tone seeped into the air like poison. Maria's heart pounded louder. She needed to act, to break this cycle of violence. "Please, just stop. Whatever it is you want, I can help." Her plea came out sharper than she intended, desperation cracking her voice. Both men paused, surprise flashing across their faces. Rico, breathing heavily, wiped sweat from his brow while tightening his grip on the blade. "Help?" he scoffed, incredulity mixing with rage. But then a flicker of something changed in his eyes. "What do you have to offer, Mother? This isn't charity. I have information. I know things you need." She felt the ground shifting beneath her. Was she bargaining her life away to save him? "You think I care about your little games?" he snapped, stepping toward her threateningly. In that moment, the tension shifted again. Daniel was still hidden somewhere, and the urgency now was about survival. "What do you want?" she pressed, her voice steady despite the terror gripping her heart. Rico paused, and for an instant, a gleam of calculation flickered in his eyes. "Peace, after all this chaos, and your boy could be the key to it." Her breath stalled. "Daniel?" Panic surged back in, a hammer to her chest. Rico's smile was cold, devoid of warmth or solace. "Yes. The boy has something powerful. And you're not in a position to refuse, are you?" The world stilled for a heartbeat. As Maria felt the icy fingers of dread tighten around her, something dawned on her. She wouldn't let fear shackle her. "You can go to hell before you touch my son." The cold glimmer in Rico's eyes told her she had crossed a line. Before she could brace herself for the fallout, a loud crash erupted just behind her. "Mom, look out!" Daniel's voice screamed from the darkness. Maria turned sharply, adrenaline kicking in as she realized they weren't alone. A pair of shadows emerged, charging into the fray, and her heart plummeted. Just when the storm seemed to reach its peak, fresh chaos surged, threatening to consume them all. What new peril loomed behind her? Who were these newcomers, and what would they unleash in this terrifying night? The answer swirled just out of reach, and Maria braced for impact. The shadows troubled the alley, twisting into chaotic shapes as two figures lunged into the scene. They were cloaked, faces obscured, making their intent as murky as the night itself. A flash of steel gleamed in one of their hands, reflection cutting through the fog of uncertainty. "Get down!" one of the newcomers barked, his voice sharp and commanding. There was no question as to the urgency behind those words, and Maria instinctively dropped to her knees, heart racing. She could hear Daniel's terrified breaths somewhere in the darkness, praying he was low enough to stay unseen. Rico whirled at the sound, fury and confusion spilling over. What now? The assailants moved like predators, fluid and purposeful. The second figure swung a weapon, colliding with Rico's aimed blade. Metal on metal sparked, a cacophony of violence erupting that made Maria wince. She felt trapped between two worlds, protecting her son and surviving a living nightmare that felt pulled from the pages of a twisted novel. "Stay back!" the first newcomer yelled, aiming a weapon at Rico, teeth gritted. "We don't want to hurt anyone, but you're not going to take him." The fury in Rico's eyes ignited. "You think you can just waltz in here and play heroes? This isn't your fight." Maria barely registered his words, everything around her blurred in a haze of potential death and desperation. Who were they? Did they come to help or add fuel to the flame? Her instinct clawed at her get to Daniel. "Mom." Daniel's voice pierced through, raw with urgency. "I'm okay. Just hurry. Stay where you are," she cried back, fixing her gaze on the mayhem unfolding. Both men still struggled fiercely, Rico, fueled by rage, with wild lunges, and the newcomer under pressure, defending himself with precise movements like he was trained for bloodshed. Perspiration dripped down Maria's back, and she fought against the rising tide of panic. In the thickening air, every second stretched endlessly. "Let us go. Now!" the other shadow exclaimed, taking a decisive step toward Rico, but not enough to escape the wrath of the moment. "Not so fast!" Rico snarled, swinging his blade with chilling precision. The newcomer sidestepped, a dance of life and death, their duel as intense as it was desperate. The alley felt alive, breath held, time curling in on itself as Maria watched. Each moment grew heavier, loading their actions with uncertainty. All she could think of was Daniel's safety, as hysterical thoughts twisted through her mind. What if they both died? What if she couldn't save him, and then a gunshot rang out, sending a shockwave through the air? Maria flinched, heart plummeting. "No. Please, God!" A cold crack of silence descended, broken only by the rush of hurried breaths. The world froze, each participant suspended in the aftermath of the sudden, deafening chaos. Maria's focus snapped to the source. A drop of blood hit the ground warm against the chilling night air. Time resumed as she watched Rico stagger back, a look of disbelief frozen on his face, eyes wide, shock rippling through the fierceness that had governed him moments before. A muffled curse emerged from the newcomer, a brief, chaotic moment of triumph as they pushed forward against the wounded man. "Let us finish this." But Maria, heart pounding in her ears, had her gaze fixed on the most crucial scene in the unfolding drama, her son clinging to the shadows, fear clashing with survival instinct. What was happening? Was he safe? And what had just transpired? As she opened her mouth to scream for him, an explosion rocked the alley brighter and louder than anything she had ever known. Dread washed over her as the ground trembled, uprooting her precarious thoughts. What had they awakened? The darkness shifted, coiling deeper into an abyss of uncertainty, and Maria's instincts screamed that this was far from over. She braced for the wild unknown pushing ever closer. Who would emerge next? The ground quaked again, sending debris skittering across the alight pavement. The explosion continued to rip through the alley, the shockwave squeezing the air from Maria's lungs. She was rooted to the spot, eyes wide, heart racing with each vibration, dread expanded in her chest. The two combatants faltered, momentarily dazed. Rico stumbled, clutching his bleeding side while the cloaked figure remained steady, eyes darting to the chaos unfolding around them. "We have to go," the newcomer shouted, urgency lacing his tone, the clarity of fear breaking through the panic. Then, without warning, the shadows around them began to shift again. From the depths of the alley, shrouded figures emerged, silhouettes of darkness gliding forward, intent and predatory. "No!" Maria's voice broke through the haze. She scrambled to her feet, adrenaline igniting her senses. "Daniel!" she screamed, her voice echoing off the damp brick walls, mingling with the scuffle of feet and the low growls of unwelcome intruders. "Move!" The newcomer spun, thrusting his weapon forward, but Rico was faster. He lunged, fueled by rage and desperation, using the flickering streetlight as a momentary guide. The others moved with practiced warning, their strides gaining power as they closed in on him. Maria's heart thudded painfully as she raced toward Daniel, hearing his voice like a beacon. Just ahead, she spotted him. He was crouched low, hidden behind a stack of abandoned crates, wide-eyed and trembling. Every nerve screamed at her to reach him, to pull him to safety, but the approaching figures loomed, their intentions clear. Another figure, wrapped in dark cloth, stepped into the light. Its eyes glinted with malevolence, and the air thickened with dread. "You should have stayed out of this, Rico," it said, voice dripping with condescension, the threat wrapped in a casual tone. "Never. You think you can take him?" Rico roared, a desperate challenge, even as blood dripped from his side. There was a crackling tension in the air, palpable and charged with impending violence. Rico lunged again, slashing his weapon, but his movements felt sluggish, weighed down by both blood and doubt. The newcomers converged like wolves. Maria heard Daniel's heartbeat loud in her ears as she crouched beside him, wrapping her arms around him. "We have to go." Her mind raced. What could she do? But the violence escalated. A wild punch, a glimmering blade flicking dangerously close to flesh. The clang of metal echoed off the walls, and Maria flinched, gripping Daniel tighter. "Stay down, baby. Don't move no matter what," she whispered, every instinct focused on shielding him. Then, just as the chaos reached a fever pitch, another explosion, smaller but no less violent, erupted further down the way. A blast of orange and red light illuminated the darkness, and for just a second, everything stopped. "Not now," she heard one of the cloaked figures mutter, and that single phrase ignited something deep within Maria. Could this be a distraction? A chance? Time stretched again, every heartbeat loud in the silence that followed. "Mom?" Daniel's voice was trembling, laced with fear and confusion. "What's happening?" In that moment, with violence on one side and darkness on the other, Maria realized they were standing on the edge of a cliff. She glanced at Daniel, the weight of the night crashing down on her. If they were to survive, she had to make a choice, and fast. "Trust me," she yelled, just as the cloaked figure turned toward them, eyes narrowing with recognition. "Get them!" it roared, plunging toward them, as the world erupted again in chaotic fury. Maria felt panic rise. The alley seemed to shrink around them, shadows creeping in. Was escape even possible? She didn't want to face the answer, but they were about to find out. As the darkness closed in once more, Maria took a deep breath, determination surging through her veins. She wasn't going to go down without a fight. Somewhere in the distance, a siren echoed, a loose thread of hope intertwining with their desperate flight. But would it come in time? Or was this just the beginning of an even deeper nightmare? Maria's mind raced. The cloaked figure lunged at them, but she couldn't let panic take over. With a fierce pull, she yanked Daniel up from behind the crates. "Run!" she screamed, her voice a desperate whip crack in the chaos. They darted out of the safety of the crates, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Daniel's small hand slipped into hers, his grip trembling but fierce. She glanced back just in time to see Rico grappling with one of the dark figures, their movements a blurred dance of desperation and violence. "Mom, what's happening?" Daniel's voice was edged with fear, tugging at her heart. "Nothing we can't handle, honey. Keep your head down." She'd have to shield him from the brutal truth of the night. This was not just a fight, it was survival. The alley opened up before them, but shadows darted closer. The roar of the suspects' voices echoed through the space, drowning it in dread. "Don't let them escape." Someone barked, and that was enough to provoke a surge of energy in Maria. She looked at Daniel. His wide eyes reflected a blend of fear and trust, and for a fleeting moment, she felt a wave of unconditional love. "There!" she shouted, spotting a fire escape ladder on the wall to their left. "We can climb. Hurry!" With every step, the siren's distant wail grew louder, a promise of salvation or perhaps another trap waiting to be sprung. They surged toward the metal ladder, their feet pounding against the pavement. Maria reached the base first and shoved Daniel up, helping him grip the cold metal. "Go. Don't look back." He scrambled up, breathless and determined, and she climbed right after him. From above, she could hear the chaos below. It felt like they were climbing toward freedom even as the danger zapped at their heels, but just as Maria reached the landing, she heard a bone-chilling whisper from below. "I see you." A shiver coursed through her. She crouched down, pulling Daniel close to her. The cool night air felt electric, and the shadows flickered like the flickering fires raging behind them. "Mom, we can't hide forever." Daniel's voice was small, trembling. The innocence in his words pierced through Maria like a dagger. How could she explain that they were being hunted? "Just a little longer, buddy. I need you to trust me." She hoisted him onto a higher ledge, scanning the street beneath them. The shadows shifted restlessly, like predators circling their prey. Suddenly, a loud crash broke through the sounds of footsteps rushing up the ladder behind them. Maria's heart dropped. They were coming for them, fast. She turned to Daniel, her eyes fierce. "We can't let them find us. We have to jump to the next building. Do you think you can make it?" Daniel looked down at the ground far below, his small frame trembling. "What if I fall?" "Then you won't. Just trust me." Maria's heart raced as she glanced over the edge again. They were trapped. The darkness was closing in, and the sounds of pursuit echoed ominously around them. "Now," she urged, pushing Daniel forward with every ounce of love and strength she could muster. He jumped, and for a moment, everything seemed to hang in the air. The sound of his feet hitting the building echoed in her ears. That glimmer of hope faded too quickly as the shout from below rang out, an order that cut through the night like a knife. "Get them!" Just then, the rod that held the hollow metal ladder snapped, swinging loose like the pendulum of their fate. Maria barely managed to grab onto the railing as it tilted dangerously beneath her weight. "Mom!" Daniel's voice screamed from the other side, panic creeping in. "Hold on, I'm coming." But before she could move, something brushed against her leg, something smooth, slithering like a shadow. In the chaos of flying limbs and muffled voices, Maria realized the darkness wasn't just an enemy, it was 1,000 eyes watching, waiting for their moment. Desperation twisted in her gut. "We have to jump." Whatever lurked below was closing in. Would this leap deliver them or seal their fate? With heart pounding, she edged toward the precipice. What choice would she make in the face of looming danger? The silent moment stretched like a taut wire. Would they really leap into the unknown? Or was this the end of their fight? "Just trust me," Maria shouted as she surveyed the terrifying drop below. Every instinct screamed at her, but there was no choice now. Every heartbeat warned them of the darkness surrounding them, the weight of unseen threats clawing at her coiled veins. With one final look at Daniel, she offered a shaky smile, and yelled over the chaos, "On 3. 1, 2." Her heart raced, a wild animal within her chest. 3. They jumped together, freedom momentarily unfurling like an open sky. They soared, and for those seconds, it felt like the world had stopped. But gravity roared back with an unforgiving grip, pulling them down. Maria's stomach dropped, a tight coil of fear and determination as she reached for Daniel, grasping his small hand tightly. They landed hard, the breath knocked from their lungs, but they rolled, just as Maria had taught him. Each gasp of air felt like victory, a reminder they were still alive, still fighting. Daniel shot to his feet before Maria could fully gather herself, panic sparking across his face. "Mom, we need to run." A familiar dread seized her heart. The chorus of angry shouts from behind them urged her into motion. "This way," she urged, stumbling to the side and guiding him toward the alley opening. They darted into the narrow passage, chasing shadows and the fading echoes of chaos behind them, but there was a fierce pulse in the air. Danger had its scent, and it was close. They pushed through obscured streets, their breath heavy with fear and adrenaline. The holiday lights around them felt like mocking reminders of the joy they once had, now just dazzling flickers against the dark walls closing in. "Where are we going?" Daniel gasped, glancing up to meet her eyes. They were wide, reflecting a mix of fear and trust as he searched for comfort. "To safety, to somewhere we can breathe," she promised, her own voice filled with a fierce resolve she barely felt. She spotted a doorway just ahead. The half-open door offered a glimpse of warmth within. Maria thrust it open, pulling Daniel along as they staggered inside, slamming the door behind them. Inside the dim-lit room, a warm light flickered, revealing battered furniture and a cluttered space. They were in an old diner, echoes of laughter still faint in the air. The familiar aroma of frying food mixed with the lingering scent of holiday spice wrapped around her like an embrace. "Mom?" Daniel whispered, concern clear in his tone. "Shoo," she hushed, placing a finger over her lips as she listened intently. The shouts outside faded for a moment, the cacophony of chaos replaced with this temporary reprieve. But the stillness was deceptive. She could still hear the muffled voices through the thin walls. "We can't stay here long," she whispered urgently, being pulled back into the present. "Let us look for a way out." Their eyes darted around, desperation clawing at her throat. She moved quietly toward the back, but her heart thudded in her chest. Daniel's small hand clung tightly to her arm, uncertainty etched on his face. "What if they find us?" Maria knelt to look him in the eye, pushing away her own fear. "They won't, Daniel. We just need to be smart." The defiance burned inside her. She was done being afraid. As they moved toward the kitchen, her focus sharpened. The danger was alive just outside, lurking, but she had to keep her son safe. Daniel followed closely, breathing heavily, his small figure reflecting both fear and determination. Deep down, Maria vowed to protect him at all costs. Outside, voices grew louder, the urgency creeping back into the air. "Check everywhere!" one shouted. It propelled her into action. They had to escape now, or they'd be trapped again in this nightmare. Rushed whispers filled the kitchen space, and Maria scanned the room. "Over there." She pointed at a back door, barely hanging on its hinges. "They would have to risk it." "On three," she said again. 1, 2, 3. They bolted for the back door. Daniel squeezed through first, and Maria followed, adrenaline surging through her veins like wildfire. They landed outside, catching a breath against the night air. Their hearts raced, and the night was alive with uncertainty. "Keep running," she urged as they dashed into an adjacent alley. Every step felt precarious yet liberating. They were finally moving away from the chaos. But with every new turn, she could still sense the shadows of the past creeping near. "Where to now?" Daniel panted, his voice tinged with exhaustion. Maria glanced around, trying to think fast. "There's a bus stop on the corner. We can catch a ride to the next town," she said. It was a small glimmer of hope, but she held on to it with all her might. When they reached the street corner, the neon lights felt like a fading beacon, but the quiet stillness sent a tricky chill down her spine. She pulled Daniel close. "We have to stay down here, we're not safe yet." Suddenly, a figure emerged from the other side of the street, and Maria stiffened, heart racing. It was the man from the diner. His face was bruised, and he looked worse for wear. "There you are. I was worried," he exclaimed, his concern evident. "Can you help us?" Maria found herself pleading. She wasn't sure if she could trust him, but with the shadows looming, she was desperate. The man nodded, relief washing over him. "Get on that bus together. I'll make sure no one follows you." With trembling hands, Maria ushered Daniel onto the bus just as its engine rumbled to life. The driver looked at her with hesitant eyes, but she nodded fiercely, a plea and a promise that they needed this. As they boarded, the woman clutched Daniel's hand tighter than ever, heart surging with conflicting emotions. They found seats near the back, the comforting noise of the engine shielding the world outside. As they drove away, she watched the familiar streetlights fade, swallowed by the darkness that chased them, finally breathing a sigh of tentative relief. "Mom?" Daniel whispered beside her. "Yes, honey?" She turned, focusing on his small face, illuminated by the fading lights. "Are we safe now?" His voice shook, holding vulnerability that made her heart ache. In that moment, Maria realized that safety wasn't just a physical state, it was the warmth in their hearts, the bond they shared. "Yes, my love. Together, we can get through anything." As the bus merged onto the open road, the promise of new beginnings hummed gently in the air. It felt like they were not just escaping the darkness, but stepping into the light, one filled with possibilities and hope. A flicker of warmth enveloped them, the chaos and pain slowly falling away. It'd be a long journey to heal, but for the first time in a while, Maria felt the weight lift. She held Daniel tightly, fearless against whatever lay beyond the horizon. There was a whole world out there waiting for them, and together, they would face it head-on. The darkness had thrown everything at them, but they had each other, and that made all the difference as they drove into the dawn of a new day. Please, before you go, I need you to do something important. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss any exclusive stories coming up. Smash that like button right this second. It really helps me out with the algorithm, and I want you to flood the comments section with your thoughts on the ending. Tell me what you think about Maria and Daniel. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes a huge difference.